Hey, I'm Pops. I want to talk to you about Jesus Revolution. Yeah, it's a film that came out a little earlier this year. Didn't get a chance to see it in theaters. Got to finally got a chance to miss Pops, and I got a chance to actually watch this, and had a pretty good time. So I'll tell you about it. Not get into me. Well, is there really a reason to talk about spoilers or not? I mean, there's going to be spoilers, but it's really based on a true story. I'm not sure there's really spoilers per se, but anyway, yeah, I will. No, it's just gonna be spoilers. Forget it. I'm like, I don't even know how to not spoiler versus spoiler it other than say, listen, it is a historical based film about the Jesus Revolution and the California pastor and another evangelical guy and Greg Laurie, who is now a pastor, and it's their three stories set in that time. And if you have no interest in hearing a lot of Jesus talk and church talk and this sort of like hippie revival that broke out, then it's not really a movie for you. Like that, I don't know what to tell you. Like it doesn't really matter how good or bad it is. If that's not the kind of thing you want to sit through, then I don't know what you're the historical piece. It's just that's what it is. So I will say this: I was pleasantly surprised that it is sort of like um three movies in one. That was actually pretty cool. Like I actually was kind of surprised that they kind of did such a good job of immersing themselves in that and going that far. So before I get too far into it, let's do what we've been doing. I've been doing this a couple times now, and I think it's really, really telling. And everybody can, I mean, again, I know that this is silly to keep bringing up Rotten Tomatoes. Everybody knows how ridiculous Rotten Tomatoes is, but at the same time, that is the tool. And in here, we can see the numbers, right? So all critics, 58%, top critics, 38%. 38. Verified audience is 99. All audience is 98. Again, reality is in the middle. Reality is in the middle. This is a very strong 3-star movie. So, okay. Um, the result is a stifling, corny, and sentimental narrative. Okay. A C. I think that's, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't see that this movie is not corny at all. And all this stuff happened. I mean, I know that there's going to be creative liberties and things like that. I mean, I don't think anyone's expecting this film to be quite literal, but I thought it was a very good representation. I've seen other things that discuss all three men, and I understand their stories. Greg Laurie has talked about it very openly. So, um, okay. John Serba, it's flat, crisp, and clean, totally square. He's trying to be funny and clever. It's not really interesting. Okay. At first glance, Jesus Revolution is an inspiring, heartwarming watch, but it gives a senselessly joyful look at a movement with a harmful past. In a way, it feels like a slap in the face in the year of our Lord 2023. I'm not quite sure I understand, because it's kind of all of those things. Like, I mean, that's actually a fair statement, but the way it's written seems like it's kind of weird. Maybe it's because of this harmful past part. Let's see. Okay, okay, this is going to be interesting. Okay, so I've Carla Hay has comments on everything. It seems like I keep coming across. She seems like a reviewer that I disagree with almost everything. The problems with Jesus Revolution have nothing to do with religion. I don't even know how that's possible. Everything in the movie has to do with religion. Okay, this 1970s biodrama about the harvest. First off, it's set in 1968. It does span a couple. It does span some time, but it's set in the 60s. Just so she knows, the Harvest Crusades founder Greg Laurie. Hey, well, it's not totally about Greg Laurie because it's also about Chuck and it is also about Lonnie Frisbee. So, I mean, I'm not trying to fact check you here, Carla, but yeah. Has too many bad scenes with hokey dialogue and subpar acting. Okay, well, too many bad scenes is a very ambiguous, generic phrase. Hokey dialogue and subpar acting. Okay, well, I can agree there's some hokey dialogue and there is some subpar acting, but what movie doesn't? I'm not giving this movie a 10. This movie is, this is a 6. This is a 3-star movie, maybe a 3.5-star movie, right? And this is silly. Many cast members are not convincing as hippies. What? What are you talking about? I don't even understand. I thought the portrayal of Jonathan Roumie as Lonnie Frisbee was actually very, very good. Now, the issue that I have with that, I'll get to in just a moment. Let me go through a couple more things here. Um, this is just terrible. An authorized cinematic history with rough edges smoothed off and a benign face put on everything. It does paint a portrait, however sanitized, of an intriguing movement of the 20th century Christian revivalism. I don't understand what he's trying to get at here. He's just speaking in coded language. I guess I could read the whole review, but I'm not so interesting. Anyway, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's the general thought. Critics hated it. Audiences appear to like it. I tend to be more towards the audience, but not as far. It's definitely not a 9. That's silly. For those of you out there. I will say this. I thought that the Chuck being called a square and Lonnie and the contrivances of how everything was coming together, I thought was a little too forced in the first part of the movie, but they had to come up with a way to kind of move this along. It can't be a 6-hour epic, right? Um, so I know that there's a lot of creative liberties that's taken with that first part because you have a lot more meat on the bones of what was happening with Chuck's church and Lonnie Frisbee coming into play, and then of course meeting Greg Laurie. Now, this is based on the book that Greg Laurie did co-write, so it is from Greg's point of view, which is fine because you do end up, with some things that kind of lean towards what Greg's journey is. Maybe there are some things that gets omitted from that memory and some of that story because, of what Greg wants or selectively remembers. That's fine. But I think that as far as the course of, once Lonnie comes in, and Lonnie is an on fire sort of evangelical to the hippies preacher, and basically trying to liken the fact that they just want love and peace. Like everyone is all bent up about the war and who they are and what they are, and he gets it. Like you get a guy who was like he used to be on drugs and now he's not. He understands how to relate to people and their pain, and Chuck sees this right away, and he feels like people are responding right away. And you have a divide between like old people and staunch people versus young, and that is not any different than it is today. It's very, very much how it is today. Churches are still and will always be, because they're run by people, closed-minded and bigoted and prejudiced because they're run by people. And that is no different if it is a far right-wing evangelical church or a far left-wing pro alphabet church and an atheist group who hates everything that has to do with religion. There are closed-mindedness everywhere. Okay. So the film at least includes that, and at least we know that. Could they have spent more time with that conflict? Sure, they could have. It's fine. The area I think they did the poorest job on was Lonnie himself. Like Lonnie has like a major change in his personality and that third act. Like he goes from, being on fire and then like wanting to lay hands on people and really start to reach out to people and not follow Chuck's structure for a sermon. And then he becomes like an egotistical crazy person. That stuff happens so abruptly because we don't flush any of that out. It just kind of abruptly happens, is probably the biggest negative of the story, not the fact that they're discussing all of this, right? Um, I will also say that the film ignores, and I don't know why, but the film does ignore the fact that there was a lot of like sexuality rumors around Lonnie. And I'm surprised the critics didn't bring that up because he seems like it's something that was in his past, and people like to use it against him and belittle him and benign his work as an evangelical, because of that stuff in his past, experimentation and homosexuality and whatever. But reality is Lonnie's legacy is centered on what he accomplished as part of this Jesus movement, the Jesus freaks and things like that. I think it was done well. Um, I gotta be honest, I was sold on Kelsey Grammar. Thought he did a great job. I was kind of shocked at how much they gave him to work with. Like they gave him some good scenes and stuff to work with. The hokey dialogue stuff, I think, is just more like they didn't know how to rewrite the scenes and give the context in the time frame, like the way people would talk in 1960s to 1970, how the conversations would go and things like that. Like that part of it, I think, is what led to hokey dialogue. And I got to be honest, this goes back to the money issue. Like the money issue is, we're not getting the best script doctors and writers and tweakers and people behind the camera that know how to do this and that. And this is where we end up having to sacrifice stuff like so. Um, yeah. So I'm really glad that we got Kelsey Grammar because I know Jim Gaffigan was originally tapped to be Chuck, and I really think Kelsey Grammer brought a more of like that stuffy guy, kind of like that Frasier element to his personality, which I don't know that I could see Gaffigan doing it as well, but it's fine. Lionsgate's has a good team. I love John Irwin's work. I think Irwin has some of my more favorite films in his library of filmography. Woodlawn is at the top of that list for me, but I think Mom's Night Out is a very strong, fun film. So he and the Laurie, they've all worked together. They're all friends. I'm assuming because the brother is the one that did this Steve McQueen biography, and that was Greg Laurie was a large part of that as well. So let's take a look at some footage. Anything worth noting here real quick? Hippie stuff. Greg admitting that he had a drug problem or was doing some drugs. Talk about the division. This is them meeting Lonnie, I assume, right? Oh, this is them watching the TV. Like here's your staunch old white guy. That kind of stuff was happening. Oh, this is when they meet Lonnie for the first time. Lonnie showing up and stuff. I thought all this was done very, very well. It was a little weird, like this the whole takeover of the house thing was a little bit contrived. It's fine. But there was like what is with the whole I don't believe they're hippies thing? I don't know what they're expecting. Are they just expecting more drug use, or the fact that they're hippies that are not using drugs? Maybe that's what Carla was getting at. I thought all this was great. I thought they just did a good job bringing all this in. By the way, this was like this plot point that just kind of comes and goes. Like, if you don't do something about this, it'll be your job. Next thing you know, he just kind of calls them all out on it, and everything just changes. Then they live in this house that's like a condemned house, which again, another plot point didn't make a lot of sense, but it's fine. Baptism scenes I thought were good. Church scenes I thought were okay. The music is legit. Like that was actually stuff happening. So all that's fine. The beach stuff, these scenes are this is all legit stuff. You can catch other sources, not just Greg Laurie's books, but other sources that talk about these things. There's a Jesus music documentary that talks about there's an overlap there of this type of stuff, right? The Irwins are at their best when they're doing biographies. That's kind of their lane. They know their lane. I think it's well executed. And I think it's a fun experience. I think it's fine. I don't think it has mass or broader appeal because I don't think most people want to watch a historical drama about the Jesus freaks. I don't think it has to do with the quality of the movie. I just think it's kind of like a pretty niche kind of thing rather than, something bigger. But I think the fact that it did well at the box office and a lot of people are talking positive about it from an audience standpoint shows that there's a bigger mass appeal than some of this garbage that most of us don't want to watch that they're all putting out. And I remember that wasn't Bro supposed to be this big movie? How'd that go? Right? And I can just keep going. I'll just stop there. So anyway, that's my take on this film. I had a great time watching it. I would watch it again with my sis pops. It was definitely a lot. I thought it was going to be a lot heavier than it was. I mean, I should just say it that way. It was a lot more fun than I thought it would be. So I would definitely watch it again. So that's my take on it. On Pops.
Yeah. Right? And I'm not